Programming. Object-oriented programming is basically way of writing the code, way of organizing the code. It is based on classes and related concepts. And what is a class? A class is basically collection of data members and functions. Collection of data and functions. Or we can say that a class is collection of attributes and behavior, and it represents basically real life entities. Classes represents real life entities. Now in this lecture we shall discuss a simple example of distance class. Let's suppose we are asked by our client to implement a distance class as a collection of feet and inches. Although we can represent distance in international system of units like in centimeter, millimeter, kilometer, but in this example we are being asked to implement distance as collection of feet and inches. That is British system of measurements. And we are required to define input function to get value from user, to get distance value from user, and output function to display distance value in a specific format. Like for example, if we have 8 feet and 9 inches, we may display 8 feet and 9 inches like this with single quotes on feet and double quote on inches. Yes. After defining the basic input-output functions, we are also required, we also need to define add distance function for processing of two distance values. And what is that processing? That processing is just to add two distance values and return their sum and display their sum to the user. Sample execution of the program is shown below. One value of distance, when our program will start execution, it will get one value of the distance from user. It will ask user to enter feet. Let's suppose user enter 8 as a feet value. User will press enter. Then our program will display enter inches to get value of the other data member, that is inches. And suppose user can give any valid value. You are assuming that user will give us a valid value less than 12. Okay. And 9 is valid value. User will suppose user gives enters 9. That value will be stored in one distance object. Let's suppose its name is D1. It will have data members, feet and inches as two data members inside it. Those feet and inches will have some specific size of memory with it, and these values given by the user will be stored in feet and inches data members of the object D1. Similarly, and now you are required to initialize as a programmer, create, build, construct another instance of the distance class. We may name it D2, and you are also required to initialize that object D2 by yourself as a programmer. You may use any suitable values. Let's suppose you can enter 7 for feet and 8 for inches. This second object is created by you as a programmer. It has been initialized inside the software, and as the output line of your program should be displaying the first distance object created by the user in the format of the distance, and then it should be displaying what this software is for. It is for adding to distance values. Plus operator should be displayed. Then your program should be displaying that value that was initialized by the programmer, by you, and then at the end it should display sum of the both distance values. It should process both distance objects. It should add up their feet data members. It should add up their inches data member, inches value, and if carry is generated, then feet should be incremented and 12 should be subtracted from inches. Now, this is the whole requirement, and this is basically memory structure. As a result, we shall be storing that result. We may name it as a D3 object. we shall be storing the result in our third data member, third object, third instance of our distance class, that is D3. Now we may start writing or implementing our code, and remember, keep this thing in mind that object-oriented programming is not concerned with what we need to write. It is mainly concerned with where we should be writing those statements, C++ statements, how we should be organizing our code. It should be better conceptually organized. And what is the basic unit in object-oriented programming in which we keep our code and data inside it? What is that basic unit? It is class, yes. We shall be starting with a class, and class is always defined from the perspective of one object. Although we are having three distance objects, three distance values, three separate, distinct, different distance values, but we need to define, we should be defining class with the perspective of one distance value. Okay? Class name, after the reserved word class, we may write the class name, and class name should be meaningful. It should match, name symbol should match with the real name of the real word concept or real word entity. In this case, the main thing is distance, that is a measurement, that is a logical thing, measurement. And name of the class is also mentioned in this statement, and it is a convention. It is always better to write first alphabet of the class name in uppercase. Although compiler will not restrict us, it is a convention. It is better to write class name with the starting alphabet in uppercase. Now, class is basically a construct with the opening curly bracket, and we shall write a closing curly bracket at the end with the semicolon. And what are the data members? Data has the priority. Data members are of more important than functions, and that's why they are kept normally private. No other programmer should be able to access these data members accidentally outside the body of the class. No programmer should be able to access, should be able to write their names accidentally outside the class, outside the body of the class, outside the definition of the class. That's why this access specifier private has been written. And what are the data members? Int, feed, and float inches. These are the two data members by which we are representing a distance value as collection of two values, feet and inches, one integer and other float. You may always correct me if I forget anything, like missing semicolon is there, or I make any compilation or logical mistake. Always correct me. Okay, after the data members, what is the next basic important thing? That we define our functions, and almost all of our functions or functions of the class are normally public, so that all the programmers may use their names outside the class for accessing the required functionality that has been encoded inside the definition of the class. And that's why we are writing the access specifier public. And what are the some of the basic important functions, important technique of initializing the data members? Although it has not been explicitly mentioned in the question statement by the client, but as an object-oriented programmer, we should be defining constructor. For what is the purpose of constructor? For initializing data members of the class. And what is the significance of the constructor? What is the characteristics of the constructor? That its name should exactly match with the class name. And if there are empty parentheses, then it's default constructor. It will initialize data members with the default values. Like we may assign these data members, since these are numeric data members, we may initialize these variables with the 0 values. Feet is assigned 0 and inches is also assigned 0. I am short of space on whiteboard, that's why I am writing these two statements on one line. But always don't forget to make your code readable. Proper formatting and indentation is part of that. Also, it's not feature of object-oriented programming. But always try to write separate statements. Every statement is terminated by semicolon on next line when you are writing on computer, when you are implementing the program on computer. Okay. Now, I may also need to define another constructor for initializing any distance object with some specific values. As in this program, it is required that the second value should be provided by the programmer by itself. For creating that second object, for initializing that second object, I want to define that constructor with arguments. How many arguments should I pass to this constructor? Int and float. The number of data members. How many data members there? 2 data members there. That's why by default, in a simple way, I should be passing 2 arguments to this constructor of the exactly same data type. First is integer one, second is float one. Although you may change their sequence, but it's better to also keep the same sequence, maintain the same sequence. Float and f for feet. It is a local variable. I for inches. The values passed from the main program, which we shall write shortly, will be assigned to these arguments, these parameters of the constructor function. F and I, those values will be assigned to these local variables. You may call them local variables, F and I. And we want to copy their values to our main data members, main variables of the class, like feet is assigned value from F, and inches, our data member inches of the class will get its value from argument I of the constructor. Now we have implemented 2 constructor functions. One is a default constructor for initializing data members with 0 value, default value, and other is an argument constructor to initialize data members with some different specific value, which we shall pass from the main program. Now, we may write code for our basic input-output functions. Input-output functions. And they are also very much easy. Normally, our input-output functions do not do any data processing or calculation. They are just for maybe, especially for inside output function, you may need to transform the format. You may need to display the values in specific format, but actually there is no data processing. Okay, that's why most of the time their return type is void. And first we are going to define input function, and most of the time their argument list is also empty. Since we are getting input from user at runtime, we shall be using CN console input stream object with the extraction operator. For readability of our program, as it was mentioned in the sample execution of the program, we shall be displaying that enter message to the user, enter, feed, and we shall be using CN statement. Thank you, I forgot to close the double quote. Very good. Correct me if I make any mistake. CN, feed, then we want to import value of the second data member, and for readability we may display the message to the user, enter inches, and for end of statement semicolon, and CN statement, and we are directly accessing the main data members of the class inside our input functions. These data members are accessible inside all the functions which are being defined inside the class. And now we want to define our output function. Name can be a display or show distance, or it can be any suitable name can be used. Currently I am using output function, and again it's not doing any actual processing, that's why its return type is void. And when we want to display the distance, first of all, let's suppose it's 8 feet and 9 inches. Which value should be displayed first? Feet. Feet value should be displayed first. For displaying, again, see out console output stream object with the instruction operator, and value of the feed data member should be displayed first. After that, we need to print that hyphen character and that single quote. And we shall build a constant string for displaying these two characters, single quote and hyphen character, and we shall close that constant string by writing double quote character at the end. And maybe compiler will be confused and will not be able to recognize that single quote inside these double quotes, and it may give error. C++ compiler may give error. So that's why we may use, if error is produced, then you may use backslash as escape sequence. That backslash or escape sequence will not be printed, it will just allow compiler to print that single quote. Okay, backslash may be required, escape sequence may be required for printing that single quote. Hyphen will be printed as it is, there will be no problem for the compiler, for the computer, for printing that hyphen. And after that, what value we need to print? Inches value. Our value of stored inside our data member, inches. And after that, double quote. We need to print the double quote itself, and maybe for better formatting on this whiteboard, I may shift that statement, continue the single statement on next line, and display that double quote on the next line with the help of insertion operator. And since if I try to write double quote inside two other double quotes and try to form a constant string, computer will be confused. It will say, okay, this single quote is opening and this is closing. It will try to match it, but actually this is our data. We want to print it as a constant character. This is not the opening and closing double quote. Okay, for this it is necessary to use escape sequence and for displaying that double quote on our console window. And for end of statement we may use semicolon. Will the compiler allow me, computer allow me to break up one statement on multiple lines? Will it allow me? Yes, it will allow me. And this statement will work fine if you press enter over here and write the remaining part on the next line. Right? Test this in lab, but it is not recommended. Okay? It is not recommended since it will make your code a little bit confusing. Your code should be neatly written. Every statement should complete on one line. So, but on whiteboard I have some constraints of formatting my code. That's why I have shifted some portion of the statement, one statement on my next line, and it is still executable by the computer if you do this thing on your computer file, C++ file. Okay, our output function was very simple, comprising of one cout statement. Now we may write our main processing function. And what was that, our main processing? Class is not yet closed. We shall put semicolon at the end of the class. There, by the end of every function, you should not be writing any semicolon. Okay? We need to write our add distance main processing functions. And for that, I am leaving some space over here, and first I want to discuss how that add distance function will be called inside the main program. Okay? How the add distance function will be called inside the main program. What should be its syntax? How we should be passing to distance values, and where should be storing the result. For this we want to write our main program first, then we shall try to define our add distance function over here, and we shall complete our program by closing the curly bracket and putting the semicolon for the definition of this class. Okay. Now as we have discussed, we may name the class instance, we may give the same name, D1, D2 and D3, like D1. You may use any names, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, any names for these objects of distance class. Okay. D1, D3, when this line will be executed, which constructor will be invoked? Argument constructor or default constructor? Default constructor will be executed, and twice for both of these objects, default constructor will be executed internally by itself, and it will store 0, 0 to feet and inches of D1 and D3. Okay. Now we also want to define another. We also want to create another instance of distance class, that is D2, which we want to initialize inside the main program. And suppose we want to give 7 feet 8 inches value, or any suitable value you can give to it. Let's suppose it's 8 feet and 9 inches. What's the syntax of, what is the syntax of passing values to the constructor? You just open small parentheses, write the values in that specific sequence, and then close the parentheses and put the semicolon if you do not need to define or create another object. How these values will pass? This 8 will pass to F data number in the same sequence. This 9 will pass, although it is integer, but it will internally convert it to float and it will pass to I data number. Value of F 8 will be copied to feet of distance 2 object, and value of I, that is 9, will be copied to inches. These value will be passed in that specific sequence to the parameter list. F will get 8 and I will get 9. In this way, we can invoke argument constructor in order to initialize our object with some specific values. Now we want to get input from user. For that purpose, we may use the D1 object, D1 instance of distance class, D1 variable, and which function I should be calling with the help of dot operator? D1 dot input. Very good. D1 dot input. I shall be calling D1 dot input. Controller execution will jump to the definition of input function. It will input or display some specific messages to the user, and it will input value of feet and inches of the D1. Now we shall be writing our add distance function call over here. And first of all, let me write that the last line, that was the output of our program. What was the last line? It was displaying, our program was displaying value of the distance that was given by the user. So I am going to call D1 dot output function. After the distance 1 value, what was printed? Plus character was printed. I am calling cout statement, writing cout statement inside the main program, and plus character inside double quotes with some space on its both sides. And after the plus, what was printed? Very good. D2 dot output is required to be printed, the value that has been initialized by the programmer. And what character should be printed at the end? Before the result, equals to. And in which object, in which variable we intend to store the result? D3. We may display the result value by calling D3 dot output function. In this way, our required output will be printed on the console window. We may close our main program. Now we have some space for calling our add distance functionality inside the main program, and we shall be defining, writing code for the add distance function or method inside the class definition. Now the important thing is that first of all, what should be the function name? It should be meaningful. We may use add underscore distance. It should be one identifier. We cannot use two symbols separated by some space. We should be either merging those symbols or we may write underscore in between. So add distance could be a function name. We may call d1 dot add distance. It is a very meaningful symbol. And we may pass d2 to it. d1 dot add distance. And we are passing d2 to it. And our result will be returned and it will be stored in d3. Is this statement understandable?
Yes, sir.
Why not? We intend to add d1 calling object of this function and the d2 that is object being passed as argument. We want to add these two distance values and return their result. Okay. Similarly, we can also call that and also define that add distance function in this format. That add distance d3, the object in which we intend to store the result, is calling add distance d1 and we are passing d1 and d2 as two arguments. The objects which we want to add are being passed as two arguments in this function. Will the compiler allow us to define both of these functions at the same time in our class? Will it allow us? Why? Function name is same, but their signatures are different. It will technically for compiler both these functions are totally different, although their names are same, because they are argument list. Data type within the argument. This function takes one argument, it takes two arguments. Computer will have no confusion which function should be executed. When it will see one argument, it will go to that function with one argument. When it will see function call with two arguments, although name is same, but it's different function, it will control and execution will jump to that separate another definition. So in this class, in fact, we shall be defining both these functions. And what if, tell me, if these two lines are to some extent understandable to you and we can define this functionality and call that functionality in both of these formats, but tell me, what about this line, d3 dot is equal to d1 plus d2? Is it understandable what we are doing?
Yes, sir.
As compared to these two lines?
Yes, sir.
It is more understandable. As a programmer, we are very much familiar with the plus operator. It is used for adding two objects, two values, two quantities. In order to make our program better readable and understandable, we should be using this operator instead of defining these functions. For this purpose, in order to work this plus operator on two distance objects, actually we need to overload that plus operator. And currently we are not up to that level. That is basically topic of chapter 8 of Robert of Orgo. Okay? We shall be doing it, but inshallah in future lectures. It will make our program more readable. Instead of using symbolic name, we shall be overloading that plus operator for our distance class so that it should be able to add objects up to two distance objects, okay, and return us their sum. And currently we may keep this statement, but we shall be commenting it by putting / single line comment. And inshallah, we shall be studying it when we will study chapter 8. Currently, we want to write the definition for both these two separate functions. Okay? Inside our class. First of all, we may attempt this line, second line, d3 dot add distance, in which the objects or values, distance values we want to add are being passed as the argument. And on its left side, there is no assignment operator. We are not going to assign any value. Therefore, we may use void as the return value, since return value in this function, although we can return, but in this sample function call, it is of not any importance. So we may use void as the return value type of that function call. And function name is add distance. And what are the arguments? Distance type objects. Our class name will be treated as data type. It is programmer defined data type. Both of these arguments, D1 and D2, are of
reflection
distance type. Maybe I should rewrite that statement. What about this?
No,
point?
sir. No.
Okay, anyway, I may void add distance, or I may just reduce that function name. Instead of writing the whole name, since I am out of space, so I may write just add dist. It is still meaningful. Okay, add dist function, and it will take one argument, distance A, and also another argument of the data type, distance B. Okay. Now we want the values of D1 object, both feet and inches, will be automatically copied to that object A. This object is local parameter of this function, local argument. It will work as local argument. Both feet and inches will be copied to the feet and inches of this local variable A. And similarly, the second value of the second object will be copied to the second argument, that is B. Its name is B in this function. And we may simply, we can add their data members individually. Although plus operator cannot add composite, both collection of values in one statement, but over here we are not adding both objects collectively, but we are accessing their data members, feet and inches, and we are adding those feet and inches. Feet is of integer type, and plus operator can add integer values. A dot feet will be added to B dot feet, and A dot inches will be added to B dot inches. And where we should be storing this result? How should we access? I be accessing D3 or C dot feet or C dot inches? I don't have any other variable over here. Actually, the object which is calling the function, if we want to access data members of that object, what we can do, we can just write those data members without, we do not need to put any variable name, or we do not need to write any dot operator. We will just write feet and inches. We have practiced this thing in these functions. Feet and inches, these feet and inches belongs to D1, D2 or D3. It depends on the function call, on the statement. Over here, the calling object is D1. D1 dot output. So in this case, feet and inches are of D1, are of calling object. Over here in the next statement, it's D2 dot output. Then these feet and inches are of which object? The calling object. In this case, it is D2. Similarly, over here, D3 is the calling object, so feet and inches, these data members without any variable name, without any dot operator, are of the calling object. In this case, last case, it is D3. So if we want to use data members, if we want to access data member of that D3, that is the calling object, we write simply just feet and inches? Yes. We have practiced this thing in input function and output function. These feet and inches are of that calling object, which is calling this addDist function. And we want to store in those data members. And now about a small if statement will be sufficient to handle that carry thing. If inches are greater than equal to 12, then we should be subtracting or reducing inches less than equal to 12 and incrementing the feet. Sorry, I forgot to increment. Plus operator can be used to change the value of a variable, to increment the value of a variable. So carry is being added to the feed data member. And our function is complete, and in this function we do not need to return our answer. Where our answer is stored? It is stored inside the calling object, the object which is calling it. This is the function call, and we have implemented this function successfully inside the definition of the distance class. Now we want to implement this function call, this another that is technically different addDistance function. Can we do it? Yes. And for this I shall be writing definition over here. Okay. But since I am out of space, I may create some space over here. These functions are pretty much understandable to you or not? I shall be writing the second addDistance function. Assume that it's at the end of, after that addDistance function, but we may write it over here on the whiteboard. For second addDistance function, just observe this function call carefully. Which two objects, which two distance values are being added? The value of feet and inches, which belongs to the calling object, and the value of the distance object, which is being passed to it as argument. Yes, these two are being added, and in this case, on left side of the function call, we can see that assignment operator. It means that function should return some type of value. And on left side of the assignment operator, which type of argument, which type of variable is being returned? Has been returned? It is of distance type. It means our addDistance function should return value of distance type so that it could be assigned to D3. Okay, or this addDistance function. If we returned void over there, then computer will not allow us to run the program. Void cannot be assigned to any variable. We must return a distance type value, same type value of which this variable or object is. Okay, that is distance class. So this function, this addDistance function is just taking one argument, one object of distance class as argument. So it means I have to add feet with feet and inches with inches. I may just first write that feet. I am adding feet to feet and storing it some data member feet, and similarly I am adding inches to inches and storing it to inches. Now I shall see what are which objects these feet and inches actually belongs to. If I do not write any dot operator or variable name, then feet and inches will belong to the calling object. In this case, calling object is D1. I want to add its feet and inches. So calling object feet and inches should be on right side of the assignment operator. Okay, you may define these assign these feet and inches to calling object, or these feet and inches you may suppose these feet and inches belongs to that calling object, that is D1, and value of that D2 has been copied to object A in argument list, declared in argument list. We have to add these objects, that's why I am writing A dot feet and A dot inches. These are being added with the feet and inches of calling object. Now, to which these data members should belong? These are of basically our answer object. We have to return that answer, and for that, in order to store our answer temporarily inside this function definition, we may define a separate third answer variable. You can name it X or any suitable name can be used, and that answer variable will temporarily hold and store our result or some value of feet and inches. So these feet and inches are basically belongs to answer object, answer dot feet, answer dot inches, and we can also apply that small carry check. If answer dot inches greater than equal to 12, then answer dot inches minus equal to 12 and answer dot feet plus carry has been added to feed data member of the answer object. Now what's the important last statement we should be writing in our this version of add distance function?
Semicolon.
A return statement. Over here in first version it was void return type. You are not required to return anything. That return statement, we should be returning that answer object. Return type is distance and answer is of distance type. Okay, we should be writing that return statement at the end before closing the body of the function, so that in main program it will be assigned to its values. Feet and inches will be copied to the feet and inches of D3, and at the end we may close definition of our class. I hope you have understood most of the portion of this program.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you may start noting down these